Scheels, for having us. My name is Blake. I am the current president of Muskies Inc Chapter 65, and this is our Tiger Muskie Fishing Seminar. So, today we're going to talk about a few things. We are a conservation nonprofit. We're not an agency. Greg's the agency. We are a nonprofit organization, so there's a few things that we want to talk about before we get into the tactics and how to catch them. But I promise we'll get there and we'll teach you some of the things that we've learned over the years. So, again, I'm Blake Millett, current president. I started fishing for tiger muskies in 2009, caught my first one in 2010. Took a brief break and then dove headlong into them in 2014, so I've been fishing for them pretty steadily for the last 10 years. So, we can go over some safe handling tactics, some release tools, some trolling, some casting tactics, and some gear that we recommend. And then at the end we'll have a Q&A. So first off, Chapter 65. We are a national nonprofit organization with chapters throughout the States and Canada, with our three major tenets of fisheries, research, and youth. We were founded in 2016, located in northern Utah. That's an old number, but we're hovering somewhere around 90 members. We have members in Utah, Washington, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, Wisconsin, and we just got a member in New Mexico. So we're kind of all over the western states. As soon as we were founded, we immediately began working with the DWR to help promote muskie fishing and hopefully get new waters and establish help grow our fisheries. So fisheries, some of the stuff we do, we've helped the DWR stock. One of the things we like to do, especially in Pineview and Newton, is to spread the fish out. These fish, when they're little, they're highly cannibalistic. So if we can spread them out, get them in covers, they have a better chance of survival. Some other stuff we do is clean up beaches. We generally get about 250 pounds of trash off the beaches of Pineview every year. And we've helped the DWR put artificial habitat in Pineview. We've gone out and helped with the northern pike harvest to collect northern pike eggs from Yuba. And just recently, these last two pictures over here, a few of our members went to the Lee K hatchery and helped with the tiger muskie spawn this year. And Craig Walker from DWR is here. He'll give an update on that here in a little bit. We helped with surveys. Last year, we went on Pineview. A number of our members went out over different days, and we, I think he said it was 3-4 days, something like that, we were able to survey 45 tiger muskies. Most of them were the tiny ones, which is really good because those indicate the fish are surviving. But then we did get some bigger ones too. This one here was 47.5 inches. So it was a very successful electrofishing survey, and we're planning on, the DWR biologists are planning on doing that again this year. One of the things that we've got ongoing, this was originally a 3-year study, and I think we're in our 9th year now. We tag tiger muskies in Pineview Reservoir. So a certain number of us are trained by the DWR that when we catch a fish, we stick a tag in it next to the dorsal fin. So whenever you catch a fish out of Pineview, make sure you're checking near the dorsal fin. There's a number on it. You can call the phone number, give us the tag number and the length of the fish, and we will tell you the last time that fish was caught. And then we also clip one of the fins for the DWR and give them to the biologist. And at the end of the year, he gets a cross section and can read the rings, like the rings of a tree, and tell us how old the fish is. Youth, we have youth fishing contests, and we do youth highlights. We're also allowed to give out 10 free youth memberships a year. And then we have some donations that we give to youth. This year is Jordan. He's one of he actually just turned 18 last year. But he caught this 50.5 inch tiger during our contest a couple years ago. So massive fish. Glad to see one of our youth got it. Ellie there kicks butt. She frequently wins our youth contests, and we've got her with her plaques up there. And then we also do fun things. We have tournaments. We run seasonal events to see who can catch the biggest fish of the year, and then every year we have an end of the season banquet. So, at the end of the season banquet, the tournament, we always run fundraisers, and those ones help help us raise funds to support the DWR, get them equipment, and stuff like that. All right, tiger muskies in Utah. They're a naturally occurring hybrid in waters where you have both pike and tiger muskies. In the spring, if you have a sudden upswing in temperature, the muskies move in before the pike move out, and you can get tiger muskies occurring in the wild. But they are a sterile cross, and so our DWR likes to use them as a management tool, on top of them being a trophy game opportunity. The management tools aspect of it, if ever there's a bait fish species that can grow out of control, like perch or suckers or brook trout, the DWR will consider using tiger muskies as an apex predator that they can control to help cut down on those numbers. We've currently been helping the DWR in studying the muskie female cross as opposed to the pike female cross that we were using. A couple years back, we got the DWR $8,500 in grants to study this cross, and it's actually been working out quite well. Right now, our breeding program is getting northern pike broodstock from Recapture Reservoir, while our muskie broodstock is kept at Lee K Hatchery. After they're bred using the muskie female cross, the eggs are taken to the Fountain Green Hatchery where they're reared until they can be stocked at either 2 or 6 inches, depending on what the quota for that reservoir is. Where can you find them? We've got a whole bunch of them. This may not even be all of them now, but Pineview, Newton, Joes Valley, Schofield, Jordanelle, Beulah, Cottonwood, Bullock, Donkey Mooseman, and Lakeshore are all in the high Uintas for brook trout control. Old Fort Pond and Pelican are out near Vernal, and then Payson and Coucherin. I know Navajo got added to this list last year too, which is down in southwestern Utah. Last 5 years of stocking, oh man, I didn't update that slide, I apologize. You can see we stocked some pretty big numbers. So far this year, we've already stocked 12,000 muskies in Pineview and 5,000 in Newton. So I apologize for not updating that slide, but we're getting better at our stocking thanks to the efforts of the DWR and the hatchery staff. I already touched on that. That's the aging and growth study. Again, you can see the tag right here. Right here. We're up to, I think we're up to about 9 years. Each color is a different year. But yeah, if you report those tags, we will be more than happy to give you the information.
Don't remove the tag.
And yes, do not remove the tag. Craig, you got a second for us?
Absolutely.
All right. This is Craig Walker. He is the aquatic section chief?
Assistant chief.
Assistant aquatic
Yeah,
chief.
I'm not quite that. I'm close.
Thank you all. I just wanted to give you an update on what Blake kind of alluded to, our effort to spawn fish this year, which was, as I mentioned at the banquet, this is our first year that we've actually used all captive brood, not had to take any fish from the wild. To say it was a game changer would be an understatement. We were able to spawn 2.4 some odd million eggs this year, which was absolutely insane. A lot of those fish, whenever we do spawn fish in captivity, we want to make sure that we strip all the females anyway, to make sure that they don't get egg bound in future years. So whether or not we used the eggs, we needed to strip them. We used the eggs because we didn't know where our survivability was going to be. Anyway, we ran through the spawn, we jarred the eggs. After eye-up, after hatch, we ended up with almost 300,000 larval fish. That's more than we can handle capacity-wise in our hatcheries. So we were kind of stumped as to what we were gonna do. Luckily, we spawned 2 separate groups of fish, 2 weeks apart. The first group, we did what we call force hatch, which is raise the temperature up when they start to hatch. Actually try to get them to all hatch at once, so we have consistency. We don't have different sizes occupying the same tanks, which ends up with a lot of cannibalism. Force hatch that first group. We ended up with, let's see, about 150,000 in that first group. The second group that we spawned, the group where these guys were out helping out, that actually was held back in 54-degree water. And we were worried initially that by holding them back in 54-degree water, that they wouldn't actually get on feed. They get on feed after we hold them back on 54-degree water, come to find out. So that was a learning experience. So, long and the short of it is we had 2 groups of fish rolling through. Of those fish, right now we plan on stocking, well, we have stocked fish that are supposed to be stocked as 2 inches, and are actually over 3 right now because they're growing like crazy. This cross has, we'll find out when we actually get in the wild and actually go through what their maximum growth potential is when we start seeing it. But in the hatchery, they grow a lot faster than the other cross. So, knock wood, we might add, a few inches to what we see in the maximum size when we use the Northern Pike female crosses out there. So anyway, right now we've stocked 86,000, almost 87,000 fish at 2 inches. They ended up, like I said, being a little bit longer than 3. In Rose Valley, Cottonwood, Pelican, Newton, Pineview, Yuba, Schofield, and then Johnson's kind of lagging behind. We're probably going to get those fish out the door next week, I would imagine. After that, we're going to stock an additional, quick math here, 19,600 fish that are going to be anywhere from 4 to 6 inches long. Those will be stocked in some of the high mountain lakes, Angel, Twin, Bozeman, Navajo technically isn't a high mountain lake, but it is higher in elevation. As biological controls primarily, we'll be putting them in Old Fort as a community fishing opportunity, more to expose young anglers to the opportunity itself and show that this fish exists in Utah. We'll also be doing the Pelican. It is a sediment controlled basin that's adjacent to Pelican Reservoir. And what we're trying to do there is actually put them in there as 5-inch fish, grow them up to, say, 12-inch fish, and then put them with the Pelican, so that we can start to use them to control carp and Pelican. And as we found out, the sausage are pretty good at living off of carp as a diet forage source from Yuba. I mean, they do really well off of carplets in there, which is pretty much the only forage in there. In addition to that, we'll be putting them in Red Lake, another high mountain lake. The southern region wants to expand community fishing opportunities down there to again expose youth to tiger muskie. And then Pineview will also be getting 6-inch fish this year because we're going to do a 2-inch versus 6-inch comparison study. We're going to be putting tags into those 6-inch fish in Pineview, and then as we move forward, we'll be able to run a wand over and detect whether that tag is present and be able to assess whether or not 2s do better in Pineview or 6s do better in Pineview when stocked, and compare that to what the stocking conditions were at the time. Ideally, we'd like to be able to get away with stocking 2-inch fish in Pineview if the habitat is available. And like we've talked about, if habitat's not available, 2-inch fish don't do well, because they use their camouflage when they're adults to hunt. They use their camouflage when they're little to hide. And if they have nothing to hide in, they sit still, and yeah, you're dressed in camouflage, but you're out in the middle of the water and you have nothing to hide in. You're basically a sitting target. So that's what we're trying to assess in there, when we can get away with 2s, when we need to stock 6s. Based upon what we have in the snowpack, we should be able to forecast what we need to stock that coming year, that coming spring. So hopefully we get that wrapped up in a couple, 3 years. And then Jordanelle will be getting 15,000 6+ inch fish. As we talked about before, Jordanelle has struggled with the stocking of 2-inch fish. Again, they don't have a lot of survival there. So knowing that the survivability of 2-inch fish at Jordanelle is junk, we're moving to a 6-inch fish to try that out. If we can get them to persist in Jordanelle with 6s, that's what we'll use moving forward. If they don't persist even after stocking them as 6-inch fish, we'll probably think about walking away from Jordanelle and pursuing an alternate resource along the Wasatch Front. Ideally, to have Jordanelle kind of have a counterbalance, Pine View being the primary opportunity on the Wasatch Front, that's what we're shooting for, so that we don't have everybody focused on Pine View only on the Wasatch Front. I'll mention that in our process of rearing all of these fish that we had on station this year, we needed to thin them. We needed to get fish out, so densities in our tanks were such that we wouldn't have a lot of cannibalism, we'd have better survival, we'd be able to get fish up on feed, we wouldn't have, a bunch of feed going to the bottom of the tanks and fungus and disease and all that other stuff. So we thinned them. And to thin them, we became the source for approximately 70,000 fish going to Oregon, Mexico, and Arizona this year. And if captive spawning continues to be what it was this year, in the West, we're going to become the source of fish, similar to what Nebraska has been historically for others. So, questions? Yeah.
Is Schofield getting 6-inch fish?
Schofield is not getting 6-inch fish right now. We're gonna have about 20,000 6-inch fish extra. What we did to account for the differential survival, potentially the 2-inch fish, was to double the number of fish going into Schofield. So we had planned on 5,500 6-inch fish. We put 11,000 2-inch, 3+inch fish in there. We're gonna double that on that. In most of these places where we had to move forward with 2-inch fish to thin them out, we're gonna probably pave in behind with 6-inch fish out of that 20,000 plus 6-inch fish that we're gonna have. We gotta find homes for them somewhere. So where we have low survival of 2s, in all likelihood, like a place like Schofield, higher elevation, colder water, less access to food right off the bat, that's where we're probably gonna pave in behind the 6-inch. Yep.
What rate do they grow approximately, like, per year?
Per year. It varies on what the water temps are, what the forage availability is. We're looking at right now getting a fish that is of catchable size to, a 12 to 16-inch fish in a year.
Pine View, I believe, is actually faster. I think we're seeing around 20 inches of Pine View.
Yeah, and again, it depends on the year, and what that forage availability looks like. Pine View, of course, is reliant on perch and crappie, primarily. You go to a place like Schofield, you go to a place like Joe's Valley, which I was telling Kenny earlier that we had a report of a 49.5 coming out of Joe's recently. They're able to get their feed bag on. The only limiter there is the elevation and how many degrees you have. So it's a balance, but on average, but then you do have, times of time you see a lot of better growth.
So you can have catchable fish within a year or two?
Not stocking 2s. Yeah, if we move with 6-inch fish, the sky's the limit.
Has the determination been made at Jordanelle why it's kind of fallen behind some of the others?
Depredation, in all likelihood. Like we were talking about before, you get a fish that relies on camouflage in small sizes for survival. When you look at the reservoir elevations in Jordanelle, there's no cover. And we've been stocking them historically as 2s, and they're just not making. There's a lot of mouths in Jordanelle. Perch can be predators, and then you've got everything from, let's just say every niche is occupied by a predator in there. So you've got to have cover if you're going to survive, or you've got to have the ability to boogie, right? And they don't boogie in 2s enough. So yeah.
They go really fast and
Yeah, this far. Yeah, they're like, oh,
and then they stop.
that doesn't do it when you've got wipers on your rear end.
Sure. Makes sense. I was just curious.
Other questions? Okay, all thank you very much for the opportunity, and yeah, if you want to chat at me anytime while I'm here, please do.
Thank you, Craig. I gotta say, we've got one of the best UDWRs around. Craig and his team are always happy to answer our questions. They involve us in Muskie management meetings, provide us with volunteer opportunities, and we just can't be more appreciative of the work that they do, and that's why we're happy to support them. So, you've all got a red ticket. I'm gonna draw a couple door prizes. Ending in 359. There might be a few. Okay, sorry. 360. It's probably the same one. Right there, all right. Give you a leader. And we'll do another one. 358. Apparently I'm grabbing all the same. All right. Since I'm drawing them all in an order.
Don't let her draw, we know how that goes.
363.
What tickets are for them polls?
I don't know, you better ask Dylan.
You can pay for them in cash. How much for a ticket?
Yeah. All right, we'll do some more of those later. All right, catching or handling and uncatching. Most of the fish that you catch in Utah are going to be catch and release only. In Pineview and Newton, it's catch and release only, that's the regulation. And anywhere else, you can only keep one if it's over 40 inches. So the vast majority of fish are catch and release only. And as tough as these fish look, they are kind of fragile out of the water. So there's some things that we want to do to take care of them. So being prepared to release the fish alive is always a good thing. So you want to keep the fight short. Powerful rods, line, leaders. We usually have a deep net, something that we can leave the fish in while we're getting everything ready. We get our measuring board ready. We have these custom measuring boards. For a cheaper option, Rapala does make a 60-inch measuring board that's about that wide, really quick to fold out. We'll get all that ready, get the photo ready, while the fish is still in the water recovering. And we keep it out of the water as short as possible. When you're holding the fish, there's a few different ways to do it. The first thing to note is you never want to hold the fish vertically. It can actually cause the intestinal lining to sever and their organs can go to the back of their body, which is not good for a fish this long. So 45-degree angle or less, horizontally. We've got a few holds. The best hold, especially for bigger fish, is the gill plate hold. So I've got my nice 3D print tiger muskie here. You're gonna go in the gill. There's a natural line right here. Your thumb's gonna go in, and you're gonna hold it tight. You're gonna pull it up out of the net, and you're gonna go horizontal as quick as you can. Quick bump, photo, back in the water. So that's the gill plate hold. You're gonna hold it by the gill plate, your thumb facing forward in this natural line, and then support its belly. If you're not comfortable doing that because the front end of the fish is rather sharp, you can do the tail hold, where you grab it by the tail and then support the belly like that. This is also good. I know fly fishermen like to do this. They like to do a shotgun pose. Right, Nick? Shotgun pose?
They do.
And then the last one is above grip hold. We don't really recommend this one. Oh, there's the gill plate hold. So you can see this natural groove right here where his thumb is going into. That's actually a huge fish out of Lake St. Clair. Jason Quintano caught that one. But you can see I'm holding the fish horizontally and supporting its belly there.
Blake, real quick, will you go over a gill plate versus gill?
Yes.
Just so people know.
The gill plate is the solid white part. It's the cartilaginous part on the outside. The gills are the red gill filaments. Those ones we don't wanna grab and hold, because that one can actually kill the fish. Answer that? All right.
Thank you.
This one's the tail hold. So again, grab by the tail, support the belly. One thing I will note about this one is it can be hard to grab a fish over 40 inches by the tail. Their tail gets really thick, and as you know, fish are slimy, so it can be a little bit difficult. The boga grip. We're not a huge fan of this grip, but it is an option. If you're going to do it, we recommend getting one of these boga grips here at the bottom with a rotating head. Not one of these ones up here at the top. And the reason why is the fish are so powerful that if they struggle, they can actually sever their jaw. So you can see the jaw is split right there where you grab it with the boga grip. The other thing is you don't want to hold it vertically by the boga grip, so make sure you're supporting it just like that guy is in the photo. Measuring, again, we've got the bump board. We always get the bump board wet, and then it's just a quick measure, and then up for a picture. Makes it really fast. We don't have to worry about tape measures or anything like that. Most of us don't weigh the fish. If you want to weigh the fish, there are ways to do it by measuring the fish and then getting a girth, and there's calculators online. If you're going to do it, you don't want to hang the fish from the scale vertically. What you want to do is you want to wrap the fish in the net and hook the fish to the net. That way you can leave the fish horizontal. All right, releasing the fish. So, caught an awesome fish, got a great picture, now it's time to release it. Like I say, they're kind of fragile. They may not be fully recovered from the fight. So what we want to do is we want to set them back in the water, and we want to hold them just by the tail, just like that. Let them float. You can rock them back and forth, side to side. What you don't want to do is you don't want to pull them through the water and back. The reason for that is the way Muskies gills are set up is the blood flows forward while the oxygenated water flows backwards. So if you're pulling the water the same direction as the blood, they can't pick up as much oxygen as they need to recover from the fight. These fish put out a lot of energy during the fight, and so we want to give them a chance to recover. So again, side to side, not front to back, and then they'll kick off, or they'll start to kick and tell you when they're ready. Oftentimes they'll give you a nice splash, get your face wet. And the importance of handling, or proper handling, I mentioned the tagging and growth study. These fish live about 11 to 12 years in Pineview. And throughout that time, we're noticing that they can be caught 4, 5, 6 times throughout their lifespan. In the case of me and my wife, we've actually caught the same fish twice. So over here, you can see me there. I caught this fish, it was 42.5 inches in June of 2018. And again, in August of 2019, I caught the same fish, it had grown 2 inches. And I knew that by the tag on the side of the fish. My wife caught this fish. We tagged that one at 29.5 inches in July of 2018. And then again, we saw it in 2021, it had grown to 42.5 or 42.25 inches. So quite a bit of growth, and by taking care of these fish and letting them go alive, we can actually catch the same fish multiple times. All right, some things that you want to have in the boat to prepare for tiger muskies. Number one I recommend having is long needle nose pliers. These fish have a mouthful of teeth, you don't want to get your hand in there, and sometimes they can swallow the bait fairly deep. So long needle nose pliers can keep your hand out of the way of the fish's teeth. A hook sharpener, hook file. These fish have a bony mouth, or you're hooking up on trees, so you might be doling your hooks. So keeping your hooks sharp will help to actually land the fish. Jaw spreaders. I mentioned that the fish can take it deep. You may want to have a pair of jaw spreaders to hold their mouth open while you get in there with the long needle nose pliers. Split ring pliers. We'll talk here in a minute about cutting the hooks. So you're going to want to have some extra hooks on hand and split ring pliers to replace those hooks. Because you just caught a fish on bait, you don't want that bait out of commission so that you can't catch another fish on it, right? Another thing I recommend having is a small first aid kit. They do have sharp teeth. They do have gill rakers that can get your knuckles. So, or unfortunately, times like this happen where you can get a hook in the arm. And sometimes the fish might still be attached to that hook. Fortunately, in this case, it was not. So one thing we recommend doing is getting yourself a pair of miniature bolt cutters, as opposed to relying only on your Apollo pliers. The mini bolt cutters are great because that's the Apollo. That's the mini bolt cutter. So, one thing to note about the mini bolt cutter is they don't necessarily have to be expensive. I would recommend getting an actual mini bolt cutter, but this Nipex pair is 60 bucks. That blue thread pair down at the bottom is 20 bucks. And that Work Pro pair is, I think, 17. So, not too bad. Nipex are great, fantastic tools, but you don't have to go with the most expensive one, and you saw how easy that cut. So, we use those Nipex on that arm to get that hook out. So, got that hook out, put a little bit of Neosporin on it from the first aid kit, and kept fishing for another 6 hours. So, sometimes that's not always the case, but if you have those mini bolt cutters, you can get that out and keep fishing. All right, let's talk about the importance of leaders. I was handing out some leaders, I'll hand out some more later. Sharp teeth means broken lines or cut lines. So having a bite guard is important. You can have either fluorocarbon leaders or steel leaders. Either one works. I mean, these fish are biting, 10, 12-inch lures with 7/0 treble hooks on them. They're not going to be afraid of a steel leader, but if you're worried that they're going to be afraid, fluorocarbon is a great option. It's going to result in more fishing in the bag and then less bite offs, which means that you'll have less fish ending up with lures in their mouth and then possibly dying over somewhere later down the line. I recommend, it's kind of preference, I recommend 15 inches for casting and 30 inches for trolling. I think Dylan and Bryce will talk about a little bit more about that in their segments. So that is leaders. And Vince is going to give us a quick demo because building your own leaders can be fairly cheap and ineffective. So Vince, come on up.
I brought some stuff to show you how you do it. It's pretty simple. Can you guys pass this around so everybody can see this?
I'm going to give out a couple more leaders.
That's the wire, and that's the tool that I'm going to show you the tool that you can get. They're not that expensive. They're meant to bend the wire.
384?
What is it?
384?
Right here.
Anyway, these tools are meant to bend the wire in a circle so that you can
374.
You can attach your snaps, your cross-lock snap. Some people call it coast-lock snap. I recommend those because they will not pull apart. Let me start with this. How many of you in here have been fishing for muskie for a year to 5 years? Okay. How many of you fish for 5 to 20 years? Okay, so there's some. How many of you never fished for muskie? Okay, that's good. Okay, well, the leader is important because it protects. It keeps the lure from getting bit off. Okay, the line will get caught on those fish's teeth, and it'll cut through some pretty tough line. So the leader not only protects from a bite off, it also protects the lure. These lures can be very expensive. You can buy muskie lures for $15. You can also buy them for $200. There's custom bait makers, and some of these custom baits are extremely effective, and they are handmade. They take at least 4 to 6 hours for each lure to carve it, seal it, paint it, seal it again 4 or 5 times, put the eyes in, put the lip in. And Blake is a custom bait maker. I make custom baits. Blake makes some beautiful baits. But Some baits are far more effective than others, okay? I started fishing for muskies well over 30 years ago, before the internet, before there were catalogs. And I would go into a bait shop and I would say, what lure works best? Well, there's a guy behind the counter that doesn't really fish for them, so he would say, try this, and I would buy it, and it wouldn't work, and I went through so much junk. Today, you can get on the internet and find out what is effective right out of the gate. You can find out about the equipment, the rods you should use, and the net you should use, and the release gear. I had to learn all that from scratch. I didn't know anything. And anyway, when you catch your first one, it's really something. It's quite a surprise to catch your first. It's quite a thrill. I had a friend that I used to fish with. He died recently. Him and I fished. We fished together for about 56 years. I started when I was 13. I'm 72. And he had a saying. He would say, the worst thing a parent can do to a kid is teach him to musky fish, because it's that addictive. When you get started on this, the walleye and the bass and the stripers and the trout can all go by the wayside, and you can get tunnel vision from musky fishing.
We have a saying in chapter 65, all other fish are just bait.
Yeah, it's really something. So take a look at the lure material, or the wire material that I'm using. I got this on Amazon. It was like 13 bucks, and there's enough here to make at least 40 liters, okay? And so you start out with this kind of a bend. Pass that around, please. You bend the wire till you can get it a circle with it with these round pliers. Pass these around so people can see those. Okay? And you get the circle bent on the wire, and then you attach the snap to it, and then you bend you make wraps, 3 or 4 wraps around that wire, and you can break off that tag. This is important when you do this. When you get that wire wrapped around the leaders, instead of cutting it off, you can bend it 4 or 5 times and it'll break off extremely clean. So there won't be a tag end sticking out that you can catch your hands on, catch your line on. It'll catch weeds, which is kind of a pain. So you can build a very effective leader for maybe $1.50, something like that. Here's the finished loop. I'll pass this around too, okay? That's what it looks like. That's the tie end, okay? So you can tie your line right onto that. If you prefer, you can put a swivel on there. If you're throwing bucktails, they tend to spin quite a bit, and if you've got an extra barrel swivel on the leader where you tie the line on, it'll take some of that line twist out. You won't have so much to deal with. If you're using crankbaits, I don't use a barrel swivel for crankbaits on the leader. Pardon? Yeah. That's a good question. I'll pass this around. This is 175-pound test wire. Okay, it's number 12. You can pass this around too. I got that on Amazon recently, and the wire and the snaps, the cross-lock snaps can be the hard part of this, building a leader, because they're hard to find. They tend to sell out of places like Scheels and Bass Pro pretty fast. So if you buy them in the winter, they'll be in stock. If you wait till spring, they're usually sold out. You can order them online too. It's pretty easy to find them. But I use this type here, and they make them bigger than this. Some guys like them way bigger than this. I've never seen a need to use them much bigger than that, so that's what I use. But the leader is a very important part of the process. It protects the lure, like I said, and it keeps you from getting bit off. And you can also make them, as Blake mentioned, you can make them out of monofilament too, heavy monofilament. What's that stuff called? What's the name of it?
Fluorocarbon.
Fluorocarbon. You can make them out of fluorocarbon too. Instead of bending the wire, you're going to simply tie a Palomar knot. How many people know what a Palomar knot is? Palomar knot is the most simple knot to use. I use it for everything, for all species, all the time. It's the only knot you really need to use, in my opinion. But you can tie the terminal tackle on the snap with a simple Palomar knot. Now, when you're using this heavy fluorocarbon, this is 80-pound test. When you're using fluorocarbon, it's kind of hard to tie that Palomar knot, so you gotta use the pliers to hold the snap, okay? And then pull the wire, pull the line tight so that that knot cinches down. And some people like to put a drop of super glue on there so that knot won't come open. But we can pass these around too, okay? That one does have a barrel swivel. The reason I don't use a barrel swivel on crankbaits, they don't spin, okay? So there's really no need for a barrel swivel. And if you're using a crankbait, you hang it up on a log, okay, or some kind of structure. What can happen is you use a lure retriever. We call them lure knockers. I'm from Ohio. We call them lure knockers. And when you go to, you lower this thing down the line and it hits the bait. It's a weight, it slides down the line, it's got a rope on it. You attach it to the line and you let it go down your line to where the lure is hung up. And you shake that thing up and down and it hits the bait and knocks it loose. And if you're gonna musky fish, that's probably one of the first things you should buy, okay? Because you will save so many lures by having a good lure knocker. But I don't use a barrel swivel with crankbaits because when you lower that lure knocker down, it often gets hung up on the swivel because it's a little fatter, you know what I mean? And without that on there, the lure knocker goes down and it just knocks that bait loose for you. And like I said, I started in the very early 90s, about 91. And I didn't know anything. I didn't even know about a lure knocker, what it was. So if I got hung up, I had to break the line off. I just didn't know, you know. But a lure knocker will save you hundreds and hundreds of dollars in baits. It's a real good thing to buy. So basically, you twist this on, and I'll show you. The snap just goes on like this. You got that tag end sticking out. You simply slip this on there. Pull it down over that, inside that loop. Let's see if I can do it here, okay? And then you pinch that circular part with a pair of needle nose, and you start wrapping it around just like this. And it'll wrap, naturally it'll wrap pretty tight against itself. Because if there's spaces in the wrap, the line will tend to get hung up in there sometimes. And you have to untangle. Then once you get it, so now I got the snap lock on there, and I got that little tag in, and you simply take it like this and bend it back and forth 4 or 5 times, and it just snaps right off. Okay, pass that around. You get a real clean, finished cut. Some people cut them off with a pair of side cutters. That's okay, but it tends not to get in quite so close. You know what I mean? It tends to leave a little bit of a tag, and it's sharp. So you don't want to be doing that. But here's what this stuff looks like. Pass that around. This is Vanish from Berkeley. This is 80-pound test. It's 30 yards. I don't even know what it costs now. Do you know, Blake? Probably $15, but there's enough there. 30 yards will make 20 of these, 25 liters. And I like this for trolling because I like it for casting too. Let me tell you what's good about casting with fluorocarbon. If you make a 3-foot leader and you're casting bucktails, okay? If you put, when you tie that leader on, if you put a bead on it, okay, a red bead or a gold bead that you can see in the water, when you're bringing that line up to the boat ready to go into the figure 8, okay, you see that bead come up, and it tells you it's time to go into the figure 8, okay? Rather than reeling up and you can't see until there's not enough line left. You see what I mean? So that's a good way for these 3-foot leaders or 4-foot leaders are good for bucktails too. The thing with monofilament, if you make a monofilament leader for muskies, you have to check them. You have to kind of keep an eye on them because they'll get a nick in them. You have to kind of run your thumb and index finger down through there. And if you feel a nick, you can cut that nick off and retie it, okay? So that you don't risk losing a fish because the line broke. Okay, any questions about that? So that's about all I have to contribute. I wanted to show you the material we use. It's an investment. Musky fishing is like bowling or skiing or anything else. You're gonna invest some money in this to get started. You're gonna have a decent rod. You can use a heavy bass rod, but it's not quite as effective, and it'll tire you out faster than a good, like some of these good high quality rods are. Some of those rods are beautiful, I was looking at them. But you get one good quality rod to start, and believe me, eventually you'll buy more, because there's no end to the tackle that you can buy from Muskie Fishing. Okay?
All right, thank you, Vince.
Oh, one more thing, I want to show one more thing. This is what I made up out of PVC. This is a piece of PVC that where they join together. There's the joint there, like you join PVC together. I just heated that up and folded it over, and then you get a plug for this end, put a plug on there, and it'll keep your leaders in there nice and straight, and it won't tangle. Now, these things are kind of difficult to keep in the boat because they tend to tangle up with everything else, you know what I mean? So that's a cheap way to make something to hold them all together for you. Okay, thank you.
Last three, 389.
All right.
$371.
And 377? That's you?
Little boy right there.
You get a bait. I'm just grabbing these at random. There you go. And we'll do one more for this round. 379. Give you a shirt. Don't want to put them on that table. All right. Casting. Dylan, you want to talk casting gear for us?
We can.
How long you been fishing for muskies, Dylan?
Well, I've been chasing them. My first one I caught trolling when I was about 16. Then I didn't fish for them for a while, and then roughly 2015 I started chasing them again. And I started out fishing from the shoreline with just heavy bass gear, and then progressed to a kayak, and then got deeper in the boat. Such as everything with musky fishing, you just get deeper and deeper and deeper. But you can start off from here. You can do even spin casters too. I used to fish with spin casters, but these seem to be a lot more comfortable when you're casting all day. A lot less sore on the finger, and they handle the fish a lot better. These smaller ones, when you get into the bigger fish, it's not enough really horsepower to get them in quick, but they do work. You just gotta play the fish a little bit more. And I wouldn't ever go below 65-pound braid. Anything lighter than that, they'll pop it. These are big, strong, powerful fish. But that's a good starting option, cheap option, and then this is the next step up. Cheap ugly stick rod. Revo Beast reel. Another small option if you're just getting started. I think the rod was like 40, 50 bucks. Reel is 50, 60, I think, right around there. But they're good spots to start. And then you can kind of keep inching your way up to these bigger size reels. These are 400 series. 300 series work great too. They're a little bit lighter. But with that, you want to up your poundage on the braid too. Because then you can start getting into the bigger baits, bigger cranks, bigger bucktails, big rubber baits, and then good quality leaders as well. Different sizes and different weight ratings for your lures is always something good to look at too. So most of these bigger rods start out at the 3/4 range, and they go up to a couple few ounces. Like this one is another mid-range one. A lot longer, 9 foot. You can get up to 10 foot too, but I prefer the 9 foot with another 400 series reel. You can cast all day. Multiple size baits on rods like this, but these are climbing up into the more pricier ranges. And if you start muskie fishing, you will definitely get there. And then you can go all the way up into the bigger ones. They make ones that handle more weight than these, but these are the ones that you can handle some of the biggest baits you're even gonna wanna throw, and you're only gonna wanna throw it for about 20 minutes, and then your shoulder's gonna wanna fall off. But, like these guys have talked about, doing a figure eight when you're casting is super vital, because a lot of times that fish is gonna be hanging out just underneath it if it hasn't chased it already. And you'll do 1 or 2 swings, and that fish will come up out of nowhere, and you'll get one of the coolest shows you've ever seen in your whole life. Having a gigantic fish open its mouth right next to the boat, and then proceeds the fun and excitement of getting one of those toothy things in the net. I'm gonna break one of those before too long. Any questions about casting?
So I'll just add, before we get into questions, I'll just add, matching up your lure weight to your rod is probably the biggest thing. You'll see a lot of rods, especially the more bass oriented ones, that'll say this rod's rated for 10-pound line or 20-pound line. You can put heavier line on that. If you put a heavier lure on it, you're gonna have a hard time. Some of these musky lures can weigh over a pound, and casting those with a rod that's too small is gonna be a pain.
Yeah, definitely match your rod to your baits. And most bait manufacturers will advertise right on there what your weight is. But with the bass rods, a lot of them will say, like this one is 1/2 ounce to 2 ounces. You put a 2-ounce bait on this, you're gonna know the first 20-30 minutes. Your shoulder's gonna start burning, but it is doable. So just getting started out into it, it'll work just fine.
You can also use a spinning rod. One of the things to note with the spinning rods is when you get some of those bigger baits, you've got, a 4, 5, 6 ounce lure hanging from your finger on braided line, and that can be hard, especially with all that weight of casting. Which is why most of us are using bait casters, but it can be done with a spinning rod. You don't have to go out and buy learn a bait caster if you're only comfortable with spinning rods. I'll throw that out there too.
Yeah, they're perfectly viable. Like I said, I started out with them too. They're a good option. They work.
Why do I need 80-pound braid?
Because it's a big fish and you want to get them into the net as fast as possible. Nothing else? Alright.
I'll throw you on the spot.
What's up?
Can you read some words of casting tips you learned in the last few years of what has made you a better angler and catch bigger fish? Share some of that with us.
Don't focus in one spot. Cover as much water as you possibly can and look for their primary food source. If you can find schools of perch and crappie or whatever they're feeding on, that's a good area to focus, because there's a good chance there's gonna be one hanging out not too far from the kitchen.
Why don't you explain what the figure eight is and why we do it,
Oh.
and the bucktail? Some people probably don't know what a bucktail is.
Yeah, a bucktail is just, that right there, that's the musky marabou butt. What's that? Oh. Doing the figure eight is pretty vital, because a lot of times when you're casting and throwing, you're just doing one simple motion, straight motion. The one thing that will trigger that fish to bite is something different, like an angle change and a speed change. So a lot of times if you're casting on stuff, throwing a quick crank or two just to speed it up, and it'll slow it down a little bit, but you want to do it in a fashion that keeps those blades moving. So once those blades stop, a lot of times they're going to flare off of it.
Show us what it looks like. Stand on, share.
You want me to stand up on the table and figure eight? I'll use my little one. I'll do it this way so everybody can see.
I was gonna get you a chair.
No, I'm trying. So when you're casting in, everybody kind of does a little different. I turn into the big right-hand side, and I'll drag it out and then swing it sharp and fast. A lot of times if they're chasing it, they're gonna try and hit it on one of those turns. But you also wanna do big enough turns that one of those bigger fish can actually chase it into that curve. So you do short ones, they'll just do this, and then after about the second or third time, they'll give up on it because they can't catch it. Is that good, Bryce? Feels good from there? Any other questions for me? All right, thanks, guys.
All right, a few more prizes. 357. No one?
Bingo over here. Maybe you're in a race.
And 372.
Hey, you guys just spent enough money. Give it to somebody else.
And this one, 391. Yay. Jim Becker, here you go. All right, I think that gets us into tactics now, which that means Bryce's turn.
Perfect, I'm throwing another wrench. Since we're talking, casting, now we're getting into a little bit of fly fishing with my buddy Nick. He's gonna go up and spit some knowledge.
Does anybody want to have any fly fishing questions in particular?
Just tell some of the gear that you use just to.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I can't get one to eat on the fly. Tell me how.
I don't know, man, you're on your own.
Do you use secret peanut butter?
Oh,
Sylvita.
the second one.
Smelly do I need?
All of them. It's pretty expensive to get into. All right. Probably like, who am I?
We know who you are.
Yeah, my name is Nick Renato. I've started down the journey of tiger muskie through fly fishing, and I've since quite a bit deviated honestly from fly fishing, and now I troll quite a bit. I primarily cast conventional tackle. That's probably my favorite. I make a lot of bucktails, spinner baits, I paint baits, I do a lot of stuff. It's kind of been quite the rabbit hole, you could say. But I did find it through fly fishing, and I've somewhat over time deviated from fly fishing because it's not the most effective way to catch them all year long. The times that you're thinking like post-frontal conditions, cold water, tougher conditions, where you need to slow down, that's really where fly fishing excels overall, I would say. The reason for that is their metabolism slows down, they're not feeding really actively and quickly, and for some reason, I don't know quite what it is, and anybody that has fly fished for muskies and fish conventional tackle, for some reason they'll pay way more attention to flies at times that they'll never pay attention to lure. The overlap, I would say, of times that flies are effective and also lures are effective would be like slower swim baits would be effective, gliders, which are a huge early and late season bait. Gliders are pretty much subsurface baits, but they have like what you would call a walk the dog action, which is side to side movement. And that's the slight, I would say, overlap there. But as far as flies and fly fishing for muskies, probably the most important things are not really the reel. It's very important in a conventional tackle setting. Your reel can honestly be more important at times than your rod. You don't need a really expensive rod for fly fishing for muskies. You need something probably like a 9-weight, 210-weight. 11s, 12s, those are honestly, in my opinion, quite unwieldy. And it's a lot for most people to actually effectively deliver that. But with that said, there's a multiple amount of reels that you can use. Reels at that point are really a line holder. Everything you're doing with fly fishing is stripping the line, pinching off the line, strip setting, casting. You don't really need to put the money into the reel, I would say, in particular. Just make sure that you have a rod, and a fly line is probably the missing link that gets overlooked quite often. If you don't have, well, back in the day, there wasn't really a lot of great options for fly lines, and they didn't deliver big flies well. The tapers just weren't there. Everything's changed dramatically over the years, and there's musky and big game specific fly lines in a multitude of different sink rates, from 1 inch per second all the way to probably like 7-ish. And that's kind of the general, I guess you would say, setup. When it comes to leaders, a lot of what he explained really applies. You can fish wire. If you do wire, do something more supple like a 7x7 braided strand wire. That'll work well. I wouldn't really recommend fluorocarbon. The reason I wouldn't recommend fluorocarbon is because they have a tendency to really inhale flies because there's no mass to them. So they come up, they're expecting like a 1 pound perch and it weighs grams, essentially. And so they eat it, they get hooked fairly deep. And so a lot of the times that exposes the leader to the teeth, running across the teeth, that kind of stuff. So you'll lose them that way. Break them off. Wires better. I know it's very counterintuitive, and it's really hard if you came from, bass or walleye or trout or any other kind of fish to think that they won't see or pay attention to like 150 pound fluorocarbon per se, or a solid strand wire. But I always say that at that point, then they're gonna figure out that there's hooks and there's a boat and there's a lot of other stuff going on as well. The reality is when they're pretty fired up, that's the last thing they could ever care about. Is hooks, your snap, your leader, what material it is, whatever. The reality is you just need to deliver that effectively to the fish. And wire isn't gonna inhibit that, and it really helps, especially with fly fishing. I would say have 2 jaw spreaders. It seems pretty gratuitous, but their mouths are pretty malleable like a snake. Like if anybody's ever seen like a snake eat a rat or anything like that, they can grab them on the side and it can be completely open on one side and pinched on the other. You really just don't have any way to get in to deal with that fish, and they have a tendency to swallow flies pretty deep. Another thing I would say is, it's hard for a lot of people, but I would go barbless for flies in particular. You honestly catch more fish, and I'm not the only person that thinks that. Some of the best fly fishermen in the world for muskies or pike. The reason why is it's really hard to seat that hook in that bony mouth, especially if it's like the top palate that has a lot of teeth. There's a lot of cartilage in the mouth. It's just real hard to get it there. But once it's there and you apply pressure, it's pretty hard to lose that fish. That's another thing I would say. And then as far as kinds of flies, really what you can cast is the most important fly. And I always have said that. A lot of people think bigger, they think better. Really in that like 5 to like 7 inch range is a real sweet spot for tiger muskies, but it's also what's realistic and castable. If you can cast a 6-inch fly 60 feet, you can only cast a 12-inch fly 30 feet, you're twice as effective. A lot of this is numbers, it's mathematics, it's being the most effective that you can be, the times that you're fishing, the way you're fishing, making sure that you have leaders, making sure you have these things so you don't have missed opportunities, because there's nothing worse than trying and going and trying and having, and we all have it. Like the most seasoned muskie angler can have 6 days of not seeing a fish or 12 days of not seeing a fish. And the last thing that you want is some equipment failure or an issue when it finally happens. That's probably like one of the most heartbreaking things, I would say. So, does anybody have any specific fly fishing questions? Yeah.
If you make your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't build your own, if you wanted to try it, where can you buy them?
So Scheels has a couple of my patterns through Rainey's. I'm pretty sure they're on the floor. They usually stock them. Those are a good start. Really, I'm a little bit out of the game, and there's so many options these days. It's really taken off quite a bit, and there's a really large muskie fly fishing community, and a lot of the major manufacturers like Umpqua, Montana Fly, like everybody pretty much stocks everything. Most of the fly shops have a lot of those kind of crossover flies as well. But really, like big Bowser minnows are pretty hard to beat, in my opinion. They really love a sinking motion of a fly, like the slow fluttering motion. I've been way more successful, not going into a figure eight with a fly because it's not moving real fast and they're not as engaged. I've been way better off kind of like cat and mousing that fish if I see it, and then getting it to speed up and just totally parking and stopping the fly. And they have a tendency to kind of eat it on like the first like 3-4 feet of sink.
So they hit it when it drops, if you stop and the bait starts to drop, they hit it.
Yeah, especially if it has like a really slow sink type of flutter, flash, feathers, starts making this kind of motion towards the bottom. They really like that.
They must get that from the northern pike, cause I'm in Canada all the time, the pike will let that spoon or whatever bait drop back to it, and that's when they hit.
Yeah.
I don't see the muskie when they drop back as much, but that tiger muskie.
Yeah, they
Picks
that's-
up that half of the
mhm.
pike, I would believe, but it's just an observation.
Yeah, I think they possibly could. I haven't really fished a lot for like pure string muskies. But I
The
always.
pike won't figure eight, that's the weird.
Yeah, yeah.
They drop it back, they hit
tiger
like figure
muskies,
eight. back
yeah,
then.
and tiger
Never
muskies
seen a figure eight
from
on a
my
pike.
experience, usually when water temperatures are fairly high and it's like a bucktail or something that's moving fairly fast, they'll follow that. Yeah, but a lot of other baits, I think you're right, they kind of learn, or like lean towards, like swim baits, I do this thing with swim baits really well. Like, let it sink as long as that tail thumps and there's some action to the fall, they really like that. Yeah. Right.
Talk a little bit about like casting double haul, casting basket, trying to get as much distance as you
Yeah.
said, really trying to maximize.
Yeah, that really makes the biggest difference, because fly fishing isn't like conventional tackle by any means. It's pretty easy. Almost anybody in this room could cast 100 feet by the end of the day. And delivering that fly is the biggest issue, and that's where I talk about the right lines and something that you're comfortable with. I would say that the biggest piece of advice that I would give is just genuinely, most people don't want to do it, they want to get out and fish, but you have to take the time to be able to go practice. It gets pretty interesting, especially when you get a couple people in a boat. I call them wounded ducks, like a bad cast, and they just kind of come through flapping feathers and being weird, and everybody ducks, you know, and it's like, surprised my windshield's not broken. My motor cowling can tell a long story of those casts.
I've been hitting the back of the head.
Yeah, and that's another reason for the barbless as well. It's not just for the fish, it's for you. Yeah. But other than practice, I would say the fly line technology is so good now, and it's all about shooting fly line and not carrying it. So when you're double hauling, it's not about the most line that you can hold and then get it 10 feet further from there. Like usually my cast is like come in, figure eight at the boat, I fling like 15-ish, 20 feet of line behind me, I pinch it off, I go forward, I don't let any line out, I go back, and then I shoot that line. So learning to actually effectively shoot line is gonna be the biggest thing, and I would say just make sure that you're not carrying line, because the physics in a fly line are that shooting head's only about 30 feet. As soon as that gets out of like the rod tip, you start losing power and you start massively losing any sort of control. So the best thing is to keep it as short as you can and practice like shooting the line. Because it's really easy to hold like 20 feet of line, like anybody in this room in like an hour could shoot like 60 feet. But they're all gonna pick it up and they're all gonna start to be like, I got 10 feet, then I got 20 feet, then I got 30 feet, and then here comes 40 feet, and it just like goes to garbage at that point, yeah. And then we said like line management.
Cast baskets.
Yeah, like casting baskets. A lot of it's like, I hate to say is muscle memory mechanics of a lot of people are like stripping and you get excited and you just wanna throw line. And before I know it, it's like in the back of my boat and wrapped around my steering wheel and around the cooler and here comes a fish. You know, it's like, so learning to do the same strip but like down at your feet is really important as well. And the last thing that I wanna cover is strip set and do not rod set. That's gonna be the biggest thing. Fly rods are very parabolic. The energy goes pretty much like from the cork to the tip. Not a lot like these rods where you have fairly softer tips and then really stout backbones. So you really don't have any force to penetrate that hook if you swing with the rod. Everything comes from a strip set. And so it's hard. I would just practice like keeping your thumb pinned down, keeping the tip on the water. When a fish eats it, I just tell everybody strip line until they take it back from you. Because no matter what you do, eventually they'll be pulling it out of your hands and it will be going back. So if a fish, like I cast that way, the fish comes in, eats about here at the table, they have a tendency to really eat and coast with a fly especially. They eat and they coast, so their inertia is coming. And so your first like strip set is picking up slack. Like your second strip set is like kind of getting there. And then your third is usually like making contact with a fish. And at that point, they'll feel it and they'll run in a direction. You don't want to lift your rod tip. You want to make sure that they're pulling like from you, then you can put them on the rod.
One last question, hook size.
Hook size? Really like 1/0 and bigger for the most part. You really want a large hook bend to be able to see and pocket and hold that fish. It's not quite as much like a treble hook, where it might not purchase quite as deep and holds on. You really want to make sure pairs get through and you have like a good hook bend for that to seat on. Anyone else? Cool.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, let's do a couple more of these, and then we'll get into Bryce with casting tactics, trolling gear, trolling tactics, and seasonal tactics. So, 381.
He went outside, but he's.
Three, 6, 5. All right. Here you go, buddy. Oh. There you go. All right, Bryce, you're up.
Everybody stand up, shake out our legs real quick. Come on, get up.
This is the good part. Just kidding, it's all good.
Not a problem. I'm an addict, and this is who I am and what I do. So, a little bit about me. I've been chasing these fish since 2006. My first tiger muskie was on a 5-foot ultralight pole with 6-pound line. Did it totally wrong, but from that point I was hooked. So, 18 years deep in this game. I love it, and it's part of who I am. These fish are, once they get in your blood, you never get them out. Like a few people have said, I gotta give Scheels thanks for letting us host this here, and the Muskie Chapter, and then all the people who donated, thank you. So, as you guys noticed, there's a little card, $10 off, 50 for Scheels. It's just trying to give a little back, and Muskies fishing is super expensive. Baits from $10 all the way up to, he said, $200,000 baits. So, today I'm just gonna talk a little bit about some casting tactics. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet, so hopefully I have answers, or I can answer the questions at the end. But these fish are predatory fish. They ambush, that's what they do. So they go around, they jump on the prey that goes in front of them. Every hardcore angler has a style they like to fish. I like to hunt these fish, so I like to throw the bigger baits and give them something. I want to give them a meal, not a snack. Does it always work? Absolutely not. But I will die on my shield and throw a big bait. The pleasure of watching them eat that instead of something like this, I find that's my passion. I do go to the little baits when it needs to be, but nothing's better than watching 40+ inch fish crush 8-ounce to 20-inch baits. Pretty rewarding. So let's see. Up on here we have casting tactics. Biggest thing is cover water and time on the water. You can't catch them if you're on the couch, and a lot of people get scared of weather. These fish are very triggered by weather changes, wind, all the fun things that you learn throughout this process. Some of the the structures I like to fish, I really like weeds. Certain lakes have different weed structures, and lately I've been fishing a few different lakes, and I normally target the Pineview. Pineview is my home body. It's got the biggest tigers in the country, and we're very blessed to have big tigers that the DNR has helped us grow up there. So, if I raise the hands real quick, how many of you have caught a tiger or muskie over 30 inches? Keep them up. 35? 40? 42? 44? 45? 47? We got 49? 50?
I have 150.
A tiger?
No, he's in Ohio.
Nice. 52. So there's like there's a handful.
Just gotta drop that on everybody.
There's a handful of us who we've been blessed by one of those. My fish was one that we caught 4 years. It's been caught 4 times. It was caught twice at 50 and then twice at 52. And that one on the far right. When my kids were there, I just won my my title fight, and we went fishing the next day and caught my pig that 3 of my other buddies had caught, which is pretty awesome, just to show the what catch and release really does. So been very fortunate to be in that 50-inch club, and it took from my first tiger to my first 40 was like 6 years. So I put in the work, lots of time skunked on the water, but my kids have been blessed to catch some big fish that some adults don't even get to see. So it's cool sharing that experience with them. So back to weed beds, points, wind blown points is huge at Pineview. Go fish where the wind's blowing, because what it does is it puts all the bait fish, push it up in the shallows, and the tigers go crazy. Another areas to fish the flats. We'll get into the seasonal stuff, but we're fishing structure, position ourselves to basically locate the fish. All the hardcore. It's hard to share this because there's so much of this. The best way is to get out and learn it. But these fish will sit on drop-offs and flats and just rocks, different kind of structure under the water. So it's pretty cool to, as a lake drops, I recommend go out and just look. You'll see things. Oh, I caught a fish there. As the water drops 15, 20 feet like it does in Utah, there'll be some kind of structure there that you would never see when the water's high. Troll. That's another big thing. Is I was never a troller. That changed my game. With the sonar we have today, you can see stuff underwater that you never know. Whether it's sunken canoe with side imaging, it's pretty wild with what we have to shorten that learning curve. One thing I learned from a young age was everyone knows Bill Dance. He had a famous saying: "Fish with someone who's better than you." If you want to be a better fisherman, you want to be a better anything in life, do it with people who are better than you, and pick their brain, learn from them. Our small group here, we started in 2016. I was one of the OGs, as we call us, the original gangsters of muskie fishing, besides guys like him who started the Muskies Inc. You know, we all work together, fish with people who have a common addiction and willingness to get out there and grind. It's amazing.
The age-old debate, do you catch bigger fish trolling or do you catch bigger fish casting?
It's each their own. I'd say my show of hands is your biggest fish casting. Yeah. What your biggest fish trolling then? Let's see hands.
I feel like it's pretty 50-50.
It's 50-50.
I would say
It depends how much time you're trolling. If you only troll, we have people who just troll, but
I think it really has to do with like time of year.
time of year. So like my fish was caught, my big fish was in May. It's been caught like in August, the other 2 times, and then once in like spring. So honestly, it's when you can get out and be on the water and make it happen. Like the pattern is moon phases, and it's the biggest thing I've noticed for these fish. So next thing I'm gonna go on to is baits. What kind of baits do you like to use? There's so many different kinds. If you're a guy who has no rhythm and you can't make a bait walk, you probably just want to cast your bait and retrieve it. If you got some skills, I have a buddy, he cannot work his bait. It looked like he was having a seizure trying to do a walk the dog. He's over here, I'm like, give him some Ritalin or something. It was wild. so for me, like, we got different kinds of bait. Crank baits, rubber, swim baits, gliders, diving rods. Depending on the fisherman you are will dictate the bait you use. You can burn bucktails. What's up, Nick?
what would be, different times to fish different baits?
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay, cool.
So, back to the casting tactics, it's all seasonal too, this is kind of a crossover. What I use certain times of year, hot water, when the water gets over 68, hot water guys. Say August, September in Utah, the water is 70 to 75. I'm burning bucktails. There's so many different applications to it. It's just, I have a buddy who only fishes spinner baits, catches tons of fish. He doesn't like using anything else. Which, the more diverse you get into, the more you understand the bait, you understand the fish. We're basically scientists trying to crack the code of who, what, when, and where they want them, and how to feed it. Some of the guys who I learned from, you know, catch fish all the time. And very rarely get skunked, but when they do, it's, normally everybody got skunked that day. So, that contrast. More with casting, there's so many different kinds of rods. If you're gonna use gliders, I like 7 to 7 foot 6 rods, faster reel for line pickup. And then for bucktails, 9 foot to 10 foot is what I prefer, longer figure eights, further cast. I run heavy to extra heavy rod just because these fish are sissies. As big as bad, they literally, you wanna get them in, you don't want them to fight too long, especially when the water's hot. Nothing's worse than losing a fish. We've lost one in 19 years of doing it. It's one of the hardest things for me to watch a resource that doesn't replenish itself die. I buried one of the things in our group we do is we bury, me and my kids have buried tons of big fish. We're gonna make that fish its final resting place. Cause I mean, it means a lot to me. I buried fish up to 51 inches and it never gets easy. Half the time you see line hanging out of its mouth from someone who's just uneducated. So as a Muskie chapter, our group is to educate as many people as possible to ensure this for my grandkids. You know, I get choked up because fishing is who I am. Like, I tell people, what makes a good person, a good man, a good husband, a good wife, is the 3 P's of fishing: patience, persistence, and passion. You have that, it'll take you a lot further in life. So I love talking about it. My goal is, as part of this chapter and a member, is to share this knowledge through all the ups and downs, that it translates to everything in life. So muskie fishing isn't for everybody. If you expect to fish every trip, you're gonna be let down. My kids have been taught from a young age that it's not about catching, it's about fishing the experience, because a day on the water is way better than a day at work, and it's my therapy. Literally, I get on the water, doesn't matter what skin color you are, what you've done, doesn't matter. I've had buddies who fish from shore who catch more fish than guys who have boats. You can have a $100,000 boat, don't mean nothing. I've had the most average boat, now I get a fish on honestly, I fish on the best boat you can get. Very blessed. I am the first legally licensed muskie guide in Utah. I'm guiding at Schofield. And my goal for there, like on my page, I will not kill a fish. Yeah, it's illegal to have one. I'm not your person. You're not gonna kill a fish. I don't care how much money. I'm not gonna do it. My goal is educate and then expand on the knowledge of what I've learned and share that experience. Because I had the opportunity about 2 years ago to, a friend of mine, her grandpa was passing away, and he wanted to fish. Took him out to Willard Bay. He died the next day. I carried the man in my arms on the boat, and the look on his face, just from a day of fishing, catching wipers and walleyes, changed my life. Every young kid wants to be an NFL football player. I want to be a fisherman. So, sharing this passion with everybody is like why I do this, and a little bit about why I get so excited about sharing it, because not everybody can go out and be a muskie fisherman. Not everybody wants to go jump in a cage and fight somebody else. I like to do the things that challenge me to become a better person and a better angler. So I just love it. The next, I'm gonna skip to, let's see, trolling. How many of you troll? Okay. Nick, he was a hardcore fly fisherman. His transition into this game is awesome. Literally, he's become a troller, really good. And Nick is a famous fly tyer. So he didn't tell you that, but he has a famous fly called El Chupacabra, like known all over the country, fish with everything. So our group of tiger muskie fishermen in this state, we catch the biggest tigers. We're some of the best. We could take on any tiger muskie fisherman because nobody fishes as much as our group. I normally fish 3 to 5 days a week, but that's who I am. Nick, we have a good group, and you know, I gotta do another plug for the Muskies Inc Chapter. It's a small fee, but the knowledge you'll gain is like being with a guide. We give back, we're passionate about these fish, about protecting them, but it's just the camaraderie, you know. The older we get, the less you have that group of people who are the same kind of people as you. Like, we all live and breathe this. We're all here to help. Like, the knowledge that you'll get is priceless. It'll cut your learning curve down, and I wish I had it 19 years ago, but the blood and sweat, the hooks in my hands, the scum phase were all worth it to be able to, at this spot in my life, to share and kind of give more insight to how to catch them, how to protect them, and what's fun about it. So, trolling. So, here's some of the setups. I'm gonna brag because it's fun. It's fun sometimes to talk about yourself. A good rod is a Shimano TDR. We all start with. They're $30. Great rod. Use them for years. A good reel series. I actually like to go to 300 to 400 size just for thicker braid and just more line. But these are all good brands. The Kuma makes a good one. Scheels is partnered with the Kuma with the reels that they make. Line 65 times even 100. Leader 36. I prefer 48, and then 80 to 120 pound fluoro. I have some baits, headlocks. It's a 10-inch bait, 12-inch that probably weighs about 6 ounces, but it's also $100. I've caught plenty of fish on $10 lures, and I've caught very few on expensive ones. They look pretty, but they don't always produce here. And then another key part is the planer boards. Must have. If you're not using them, you're missing the opportunity, because a lot of times these fish, with side image, you can literally mark the fish and have your planer board and go over the top of that fish and catch that fish. It's huge. You gotta get the spread. I run up to 6 to 8 rods on my load, 4 on boards, 2 out rods and 2 down rods. Just optimizing the opportunity to be successful catching these fish. So this is a rod that I worked with Rocky Mountain Tackle and Design. We spent a year basically just demoing it out and building the perfect musky trolling rod, which can handle baits from 4 inches all the way up to like 14. They sell them here at Scheels. They're $110, not too expensive, and being a Scheels product, they guarantee their stuff. So if you ever have a problem, bring it back with the carry it. And there's a cold water reel, but it's a Scheels brand. I don't like the colors because I'm a Ute, but I have to live with it. So I'm gonna pass this around just so you can hold it. One thing is this rubberized grip. We beat the crap out of our gear, so it's nice. This holds up really good. This rubberized cork is also super nice, and it just cleans up really well, but it's long so you can fight the fish right here. If it pulls, it's just nice, a lot of rod to hold on to, and then it's very functional for what we do.
What is that, 8 feet?
This is 8'4".
Do they have telescopic or?
No, it's 2-piece. So the rod is crucial, and if you're gonna be running rods down in the prop wash, you can go 7'6". There are just so many different variables. I run all these in a couple custom ones, but for the most part, that gets the job done. Here's a setup, and this is what a planer board looks like if you've never fished them. These are Foley rod holders. Honestly, the best rod holders you can get. They're not gonna pop out, they're not gonna break. One of my good buddies and one of the chapter members is a sturgeon fisherman, and a 9-foot sturgeon won't break them, either is a 48-inch muskie. So, any questions about this picture, that maybe why the rods are down? There's a lot of people have a bunch of theories, but I like the rods down. If there's weeds, keep the weeds off of it. And then I like to, every bait runs at a certain depth. Every bait I run, I can literally tell you what it is at 3 miles an hour to 5 miles an hour. And knowing that placement of the bait is huge. A lot of people drive around fishing blind. With new technology like live scope, you can literally see the depth of that bait. Remember, muskies, eyes on top. You below that, they can't see it. So remember that, always with the bait. So bait's here, fish is here, relative to where it goes. So the speeds too, the faster you go, the deeper it dives, and some baits blow out. So tuning those baits, bending them, they don't come straight ready to fish out of the box. If the bait's wandering this way, you bend the eye the opposite way. It'll line it up, put it in the water. It's stuff like that I see a lot of people, their baits are up on top, and I'm like, what are you doing, you know? And we're all guilty of it. It's all those fine tips and tricks to fine tune your baits to run and give the presentation to these fish to be successful. So The dive curve is the depth. Always run different depths of your bait so you know where the fish are sitting. I had a day out of Pine View where they only wanted one color, chartreuse, and so I'm like, maybe I had 4 fish on it, switched this bait from the same bait to a different color, let the line out, wouldn't touch it. 5 minutes go by, send the same bait out, got bit. Replicating what you caught that fish on, they did it for a reason. And we ended up catching, I think, 7 fish trolling. They only wanted this one Myers bad shad crankbait. And it's weird. We all have our things in certain colors for certain times of the day, watercolors. It's just, it really is a science, and understanding what that is will unlock a lot of the questions to why you caught that fish.
If you had to recommend, say, 3 baits that you can buy pretty easy, not a headlock, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
something, say, under $70, $50 for trolling.
Can you go to that picture? So there's, honestly, there's 3, I hate to do this because some of the good stuff that you have to pay me to find out, but it's all. So these are all sold here, so this, my buddy's on this company, so this is a 22 short, they're here, they're $22. They have rattles, tigers like rattles, and then you got the Chad, and then the 22 long, we got a baby decorator, this is the tough shad. Honestly, take a picture of this. I learned it from the slides on me. So right here, these baits for crankbaits, you can't beat them. Then you got, so I helped Scheels bring in all the musky baits that are producers. Literally, you can go buy them in any lake in Utah, you'll catch fish.
So you said Chad Shad, 22 short?
So
22 short?
Yeah.
Shad shad?
22
22 long.
same made by the same.
Decorator, tough shad,
J13.
J13, and Rapala Extra.
Do you know Chad Harmon?
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are my buddies. So I'm friends with like some good people in the business. So, and all the names are on the side right here. So it's a good picture to start some crankbaits.
Bryce, what you got back on that what you got on the back of that J13?
Maybe decorator.
That's not mine. I don't know. But I've seen everything. I mean, just like an X-Wrap, a little bit of fur sometimes that gives it some action and a little appeal. But those are great trolling baits, casting baits. And once you fish them, you'll know how deep they get by burning it. You can burn it, let it rise. Just find your flavor of how you like to do it and do it. Learn it. I like to rip big rubber. I like to use diving-rise, gliders. Just, I have an application. I got so many baits, like a lot of us. Like if you saw my garage with rods and everything, it's wild. I have an application for every time of the day bait. It's a sickness. Your wife, your partners will hate you, but it's what makes us happy, and we could be out doing a lot worse stuff.
So here's something funny. The smallest bait up here, the 22 short. A few years back, we were running one of our tournaments, and one of our guys caught a 51 incher on that 22 short 17 minutes in. After 17 minutes, the rest of us were fishing for second place, and he caught it on that little bait.
So yeah, Brady caught a big fish.
In the middle of nowhere, too.
Yeah.
He was crossing from like one feature to another.
And that's a very easy bait to cast also.
Oh, cast it, it bounces off the rocks. The guy who made both these two, Chad Harmon, they fish Kentucky with a lot of wood, so he'll bang it off the wood, and this is another deflection that these fish like to eat, just a reaction.
I have a question for you or anybody in here. Back east in one of our best musky lakes, Lake Vermilion in northern Minnesota, they do a lot of open water trolling. Muskies are sitting out there in 50 feet of water, and they're casting, when they're catching the top baits, they only go down like 5 feet, or trolling shallow diving baits. Have you ever seen that out here?
Oh yeah, so that's where I caught my second 50 inch was out in Vermilion. What happens is the mayfly hatch, and they'll go out at night, and the muskies eat it's a kind of fish that goes and eats the mayflies, so they follow them, and they do it a lot at night. But yeah, they're open water trolling through mayfly hatches.
But have we seen it out here?
Oh, so we do have open water trolling, and that'll get, but we'll talk about it now. So in the summer, let's just skip back. Take pictures of this stuff, because this is stuff that you won't find anywhere where it's broken down. This is just how we troll. It's exactly how you want it. Contour map, Pine View, the only ship you can get is hummingbirds, or Lake Master.
Yeah.
So that, for hummingbird, there is nothing else for anybody else. If you're Garmin, you're SOL, but.
Yeah, hummingbird, do your auto chart, it'll even be a little bit better, you'll find the nooks.
So the slowest I troll is 3 miles an hour. I troll up to 5. So I go a little fast, but finding baits that can go that speed is hard. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of the factors of what I choose on my lure selection is what I'm fishing, water cutoff, water clarity, sky conditions, depth, just so I'm not running a bait below them, because sometimes it is good to get it in the mud, to stir up the mud. But most times I want the fish to hunt it down and kill it, so that's what I like to do.
While you're on that page, sorry, go back to that recall, as you talked about tuning, I have a lot of that blowout coming up when I'm trolling. Can you explain to me how to tune that in a little
It
bit?
depends on the higher end baits will run better. The 22s, the Rapalas will blow out, but they also don't. The J13 is a really good running bait, but if you're running really small ones, heavy musky gear kills the action, and it just changes the depth of how they can, where you can run them. So I would try expanding your bait collection to find baits that can handle that speed, how fast you're going, because the smaller baits with an 80-pound leader, it affects it.
So if you're trolling and your bait is wanting to roll this way, you're gonna take your line tie right here and bend it a little bit this direction. And then put it back in the water and see if and it doesn't take a lot. Just little adjustments until you find it running straight. Sometimes you can go over and then it'll start going that way. But all it takes is just bending that eyelet a little bit. And honestly, I like to use, some guys will have different opinions on the tools they like. I actually like to use my split ring pliers, the little hook at the end. That works great for grabbing that little tie.
You got to remember though, you got when you switch sides, it's different. So tune that on the side you're gonna be on, because I've seen people go to this side and you switch side and it goes the opposite. Keep it on the side you're gonna run it on, and then just check it before you let it out. Don't just blind shoot it out the back.
And speed will change that too.
Yep.
Sometimes certain baits can't go that fast. They're gonna walk no matter what.
Yeah.
And then the high end baits, the headlock, literally it'll kick all the way to the surface and it'll pause and it'll shoot back to the middle, which is a $100 bait that the technology and the weighting is awesome. It's pretty cool. It triggers fish, but I've caught 5 fish on 10-inch headlocks over the years, and they're all 42 to 44-inch fish. They haven't caught me bigger fish. The 22 shorts caught my son's big fish in the picture, and the tough shad.
54 and a half, 53 and a half.
51.
51.
Yeah, there's just so many options for that. Okay, we're gonna jump into seasonal. So how I like to do it, how I fish in the spring is different than how I fish in the fall. Springtime at Pineview, a lot of you know who ice fish it. The fish move to the dam, they move to the open water, the big basin areas. As the ice comes off, guess what that bait fish, they move up to the shallows, do their spawn, and guess the muskies follow them. So literally Pineview right now, if you went up, you could drive in the middle of the lake and you'd see massive schools of bait fish. It's the most wild thing. It's literally like a herd of elk moving up the canyon, because they're just migrating to their spawning grounds, and the muskies aren't too far. And this, I wish I had some pictures, because literally it'd be 30 feet of blacked out clouds of fish, and the muskies are always right there. So go fish the shallows, the weeds, the muskies. Some of these tigers do go through a fall spawn. They'll look all beat up, but they have to eat where the bait are. The muskies aren't too far behind. So spring, fish shallow, big flats where the water's gonna be the warmest. That's where they want to eat. They want to break down that food. Their metabolisms are fired up by normal water. We'll go from spring to summer. This is when I feel the fishing at Pineview gets off. That's like 64-degree temp on up. The fish have started moving to the main lake structure. They're following the bait, has finally got out of the weeds, and they've done their spawn, and they're gonna move out too to say Pineview 15 to 40 feet of water. The trolling bite in summer is awesome. Catch a lot of fish trolling. Early morning, what we like to do is I like to get out 4 or 5 in the morning right before the sun comes up, top water, shallow, because those fish are sitting shallow. You can catch them for bucktails and top water. As the day goes on, they move to the first break, 10 to 12 feet. At Pineview, it literally goes flat here and they'll drop off. On that first break is where they'll sit before they go out to the main lake and start feeding on open water bait fish. And what we do for that is we just troll through them. They'll be down 20 feet. Troll through the bait fish on your sonar, let the technology work for you? Because say if they're at 20 feet, you know your bait runs 15, these fish can tail kick and eat your bait in seconds. So that's just knowing where those bait fish are and where they're migrating is keys to it. Wind direction is huge. So summer, up shallow in the mornings, move out deeper as the sun comes up, as the sun comes down, move back shallow again because they start to go and set up on the shallow flats again. So that's my experience. Fall, these fish disappear as it gets colder. It's weird. They'll eat till about, really good till about late September, October. They start getting sluggish. Where true muskies, this is the prime time when they're putting on the feedback. They're gaining a lot of weight. They're eating a lot of food. These tigers are bipolar and they're wild. So fall, I like to use slower moving baits, slower ripping rubber, finding stacked bait fish, and just giving them what they want. Because whatever it is, they slow down. I've caught fish in December ripping mag dogs down by the dam, just when they're chasing those schooling up crappie. But it's brutal. There's other things I do now. I literally have a list of what I fish for: lake trout, muskies, walleye, just so I have something to do all the year. I just stop fishing later in the year because it's not as productive. When you got winter and ice, I have no desire to go fishing through the ice. Just never been a thing. I'd rather be at the gorge. There's some guys who like to because it's a challenge. Waiting for one fish all day on the camera and praying it eats your bait. I want to hunt them how I want to do it. I don't want to sit on an ice and hurry up, see one on the camera, have to drop down the musky gear when I'm perfect crappie fishing. It's not my cup of tea, but there are some guys in here. How many of you have caught them on the ice, through the ice? How many have fished for them through the ice? Yep, I've never caught one. I've done it a few times, no desire. But if you have any questions with that, there's a lot of knowledge to be answered with that. My favorite time is June, July, August, because you get a fish, the full moon's at night, which is pretty fun. The topwater bite is the coolest thing ever. Watching a fish literally try and kill something on top. On 10 to 14 inch baits, like literally killer whale that blow it out of the water and then they keep coming after it. It's one of the most rewarding ways to catch them is watching them kill something off the top. So, any questions? I just try to blow through it because we're getting to the end of it and want to give some time for some questions. Any questions you guys have?
Can you touch on peak water temperatures in the summer?
So these fish are super sensitive to water. Yeah, the catching gets better as it gets warmer, but I'd say I stopped fishing about 78. It's hard. I'll be alive. It's probably the hardest thing to do is to stop fishing when it's prime. But when you see how many dead fish we've seen, so is that what about 78?
Yeah, 78 and up. Most of us who are diehard muskie anglers back off of fishing for tigers. We'll go find other waters. Schofield is an up and coming fishery. Peak water temperatures there are usually around 74. You can go somewhere where it's going to be safer for the fish. At your high water temperatures, there's less dissolved oxygen and the fish's metabolism's gone into overdrive. So, even though you're doing everything right, you're trying to keep the fight short, that fish is going to have a very hard time trying to recover from the fight. So, the good news is those peak water temperatures are generally only a 2 or 3 week period. End of July, early August at Pineview and Newton, and then, we can get back at it. But try to avoid those water temperatures. It's just better for the fish, and nowadays we've got a lot of different musky waters that we can, go somewhere else and give Pineview a break.
Another solution we found to that is fishing late or early in the morning. You can get some of that time in, but I've night fished a lot and it's only produced very few fish, where some other people have had more success. But we'll get on the water at 10, fish till 4 in the morning. I know Nick has done all right, but it's a whole nother ball game. Fish in the dark, throwing a lure this big, and we all get fatigued, and sooner or later you're gonna get a hook in your hand. We've all been there. Just maximizing what we have, the time on the water. You can't catch them if you're on the couch, like I said before. Get out there, do it when you can. Set yourself up for the best success. Knowledge, asking questions, join the Muskie Inc Chapter. Just putting yourself out there to learn and be taught and give back, because we all started somewhere, and how far you want to take this is up to you. It's how much work you want to put into it. So that's, yeah.
And we have members who, like me and my wife, from May to October, that's all we fish for. But we also have members who fish for them once in a while and are just happy to be part of the chapter. So don't feel like if you want to join us, don't feel like you have to be full into the muskie. We've got people who have been doing it for 10, 15 years, and we've got people who want to learn, and we've got people who are just happy to be friends. So
Yeah, it's like $40 an individual, I think 60 for a family, so pretty good, and you get a discount at some places with the Muskies Inc. It's just a good environment for us fellow muskie fishing addicts to come. We have a social media, so you can keep up on the chat. We give a lot of information where at the beginning we were pretty tight-lipped and kind of elitist and snobby like fly fishermen, but over time we had to educate people to share this so we can keep it going. If we didn't have a good partnership with the DNR and voicing our concerns, because we're pretty vocal, we're really vocal because we love these fish. Like, we probably push it a little hard, but when you spend as much money as we do, we want to make sure that our voices are heard. And I feel we're pretty tactful now. I mean, we've had some conversations at work, but we want to see these fish. Pineview is the best tiger muskie lake in the country. It produces the biggest fish.
I would say that when Pineview's healthy, it's the best tiger muskie fishery in the world.
What's up?
So, I had a lot of, I worked in a bait shop, we had a lot of questions, is there any magic lure or any, not magic lure, but what can I go cast and I can guarantee catch a fish? You're not going to, there's nothing, but I've been muskie fishing, not as long as a lot of these guys, but when I joined up, spend that $40, that's the best $40 you're ever gonna spend in muskie fishing. Baits, rods, line, boat, whatever, that $40 is gonna get you further than anything else, just from being around these guys and the knowledge that they have and are willing to share that you're not gonna get anywhere else. Like Bryce said, it's time on the water, you can cut that learning curve way down, and the chapter is a great place to start doing that, because you've got people that have been there and done it and are willing to help you learn how to.
And a lot of the people in this chapter just want to fish, and they'll take you on their boat. It won't be it's just two people going fishing, and they're pretty open. Hey, I have an open spot, come jump in. That knowledge, you're gonna cut 5 years off of it, seeing what they have, asking questions, and not only in their boat, but in the open group dialogue throughout the Facebook page. You will get what you put into it, or you will get nothing if you don't try it. It's really that simple. We're a bunch of just normal people who have lives, but mostly revolves around these fish for 7 months out of the year. And I'm so hardcore, I got a freaking muskie tattoo on my arm, it's who I am. I love this, the figure 8 bites. If you ever had one, it's the craziest thing. I caught my big fish in the 8 with my kids there, and it was chaos, but it's just part of this journey. And yeah, we just want to educate you and share some cool stuff with conservation, and we do all kinds of fun stuff. We get together, we barbecue, just a bunch of friends who fish, and share that. So yeah, if you have questions, you can join here at the Muskies. Just email us. We're pretty easy going people. So.
What is your favorite bait season? When do you live there?
That's my son. You already know what I like to use, but
That was the secret.
there's honestly, I was a bucktail guy. I love running bucktails. There's a time and place for everything. You could go put on a spinnerbait, you cast long enough, it will get eaten. But then the fish go deep and it changes. They're just different times of year, different applications. Just find your niche and what you want to do, what you're geared for, because you don't want to throw a heavy bait on a light rod. It's just not worth it. Nick.
And maybe just tell them about how year to year, you can't even replicate your own bite most.
Yep. A few years ago, we had the most insane topwater bite. It was absolutely insane. Me and my son went out. He was 0 for 0. Our best day, I think we caught. He didn't catch nothing. He lost them all. We caught 13. We caught 13 fish in 4 hours, and 7 over 40 inches. The biggest was 47. And then the topwater bite literally disappeared the next year. It's absolutely crazy. These fish are bipolar. One year they're eating 18-inch mag dogs. Now they won't even touch rubber. Day to day. It's day to day. One day the color. That's the best thing, is you think you have it figured out, you will be humble, put in your place real quick. We all done it. I've started fishing a different lake that I'll be guiding on, and I fished the way I fished at Pineview, and I got my ass kicked, humbled, and then I opened my mind up, and remember, it's them that we have to beat, not ourselves.
Yeah, you think about people that fish trout on the Green River complain that they're really hard to catch. When we go through and do calculations, I mean, those fish get caught hundreds of times, and they get educated.
Yep.
I don't consider trout to be as smart as an apex predator like muskie, right? Now you start throwing catch and release with an apex predator line, it's very similar to largemouth bass fishing in the fact that as they get educated, you gotta change it up, and you're always having to come up with something new and a new way to trick them into biting. It amazes me when I see the same fish get caught multiple times. It'd be interesting to see if they get caught multiple times with the same type of bait, or if it's something different that they had to be enticed with. And you see it all the time. You follow those fish. Dollars and Donuts have been hooked multiple times, and they're like, yeah, no, that's, no. So, yeah, it's a super cool sport within a sport.
You might get lucky and catch it on your first time fishing for them, you know, good for you, but there are the fish of 10,000 casts, and it took me 1.5 years to catch my first.
One thing I like to tell people is they're not like trout. They're not like bass. They don't school up. You're looking for the one hungry fish in the lake. They're a solitary predator, so you gotta look for that one fish that's willing to bite. It is a challenge, but it can be done. And we're hoping that you took something away from this. So, Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, and it kind of goes to what you helped me out with for my trip next week. Talk a little bit about weather patterns, and like, you know, we have some nice days, and we run into some bad weather with rain before or after, during.
I think you just popped that up. This time of year, spring is the worst to fish during the front. Summertime, we pray for the worst weather. I want the crappiest day in the summer. It shakes up, it goes from 90 for weeks. That little bit of cool down, whatever it is, it kicks them, fires them up. Moon phases, minors, majors. That's stuff you need to look at, because Minnesota, I go, literally the guides, there's a bite window, the first full moon in August. There's like a 10-minute window, and it was crazy. When I caught my big fish, all the guides' phones go off. Like, it's weird how the big fish are all caught on these windows, and it's just a science of it. It's just the predatory nature of what the moon can do to affect a bite. Do you have anything to add on to that?
No, I just want to echo it. You know, in the spring, if you have a long stretch of warm days, that's going to be a great time period. You know, then you're going to get a cold front like we're in right now, and it's just going to shut it off. So, for example, I was out last Saturday at Newton. Water temps were 57. I hooked up on one, and it ended up getting off. Got my blood flowing. I was real excited. Now it's raining. I'm pretty sure that if I were to go again tomorrow, those water temps are going to be down 52, and those fish are just going to be lockjaw. So, you know, it can be done, but, you know, after a storm, especially in the spring, is going to be really, really tough. You know, and then in the summer, your long stretches, you're looking for that weather change. That storm coming in, if you can be there before that storm, you know, that's going to be a prime time for you.
Definitely before storm.
Summer, yeah.
In the summer,
pressure
yes.
changes, yeah. The pressure changes. You'll watch a huge dump. Literally, they can sense it, and they're going to feed because they know that.
So we had a chapter member a few years back. He went out on a Thursday, and he ended up catching 2 fish, and one of them was a 48-incher. That night, it dumped a storm on us. My wife and I went out the next day, and we didn't see a fish. So the storms can shut them off. So if you can get out there before a storm, you'll have a pretty good chance. But, you know, the other thing that I'll add is, you know, fish when you can. You know, it's fun to get out, like Bryce was saying. Take your kids, have a good experience. You know, but there are some times when the muskies are more willing to bite than others, and you know, I'd say, you know, early mornings, especially in the summer. You know, in the spring, you're looking for the warmest water before a storm. Those are all good times.
One more plug for the chapter. If you need gear, you can get cheap gear on our thing. Like, people are always getting rid of it. Baits, rods, reels. You won't find them anywhere cheaper, and this is all high quality stuff that we always buy the latest and greatest, so it's a great way to pick up. You can always say, hey, anybody got stuff for sale? for a cheap price, and I think we're gonna try and, I'm gonna get together with some of the other people in our group, and I have friends donate baits, so I can give to new members, so if maybe we'll think of doing that. If you're a new member, we'll throw some stuff, if I can get it donated from some buddies back east who just don't use it, so we did it before, just to help you guys out, just, cause this is an expensive hobby, but you gotta pay to play, or you ain't gonna catch much, you might get lucky.
Do you have another question, Jim?
Well, really, I just want to give a quick plug to the chapter. You know, as a fairly new member, I've only been a member for a couple of years. Been very fortunate to fish with some experienced people, and I've caught a couple. But the amount of information that people who have experience are willing to give, I was surprised. And pleasantly surprised, to say the least. You know, like she said, it's a fish of 1,000 casts.
10,000.
And to, you know, just kind of give information, I mean, not just what to use, but where to go, things like that, the different lakes. It's been, I've been very pleased. It's not like, I you know, was a bow hunter for many years. It's not like, hey, where's your 30-inch mule deer? In my head, you'll never know. Like, these guys share information and they help you be successful. They want the chapter to be successful, they want the members to be successful. You know, and I've been just very pleased with the organization itself, and thank you for all the information.
Absolutely.
You guys have helped me with.
I think that window thing you mentioned, I think if I was just starting out, I wish I had known that when I was starting out. Because you can get on the water at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by noon, you're pretty, what's the word? You're pretty downtrodden because you haven't seen anything. You wonder if, you know, can these fish even be caught? If I got to, you're switching baits 50 times. And then from 1:15 till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you go back and talk to your buddies, and everybody caught their fish in that 45-minute period that day. And if you get off the water at noon, you weren't there. So this isn't like bass fishing or crappie fishing. You gotta be pretty tough. There's a mindset that goes with it. And without that, you'll give up. You know, and you'll just go home.
Just to triple down on how hard they are. We intentionally use them as biological control, right? That's primarily what we manage with them for. There's a side benefit of having them be a trophy opportunity. There are some waters where we do manage them quality trophy fishing opportunities solely, but primarily we're out there putting them in waters to control rough fish. The reason why we wanted to control rough fish is because the rough fish are super abundant. For those of you that have fished Willard Bay before, when the shad are super abundant, fish get harder and harder to catch when their bellies are full. And that's another thing to factor into decision. When you get follows, they'll give you interest, but they're really not hungry. They get enticed, but not all the way. So just be aware of that.
Crazy too.
Well, it'll drive you nuts, yeah.
It'll drive
But I
you
mean,
nuts.
just be aware of that, you know, it's not you, it's the fish too, right? It's the way the fisheries behave.
All right, any other questions?
So, when and where do you meet at the club?
So most of our interactions are on Facebook, and I send out emails pretty much not every other week during the summer months. We have 1 to 2 tournaments a year, and even if you don't fish it, we always encourage everybody to come out to the award ceremony at the end. And then every November we have an end of season banquet where we do the award ceremony for our seasonal events. Craig usually joins us and does another update from the year. We do a fundraiser where we give out baits. And then we have good food, and we usually hold that one at the Timber Mine in Ogden. But yeah, most of our interactions are done either through emails or on our Facebook page. We used to try to hold member meetings throughout the year. That kind of went away after COVID. So most everything is just done online.
We're using Skype calls.
Yeah.
Chapter, like, so
a lot of times we'll try to do like a, pre-season meeting, over Skype for our newer members, that kind of thing. So.
The chapter for us is a way for us to get opportunities to come out and assist us with netting, electrofishing, spawning, whatever it is. It's, if you remember the chapter, you hear about those things, and you're able to come out and assist, so.
And those events are fun. If you get the opportunity to do it, go do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things that we do outside of just the knowledge. It's like literally there's a lot of options.
Application, there's all sorts of stuff that we do.
We partner just trying to make awareness, go out with them and shock fish and see some of the cool things that how it works. Ask them questions because they want to feel like they're part of it, and they're great. They've been great to work with. I've seen the last 9 years or 8 years working as a member of what they've done with us, and because I've been in and out of the loop, but they've always been there to help make it better, And if we don't have voices, then that's on us. We have to speak up, let them know what we're seeing. We have people. We got the Schofield guy over here, Jake, who lives in Price. He came all the way up for this. We're spread out because people care, and that's what we're here for outside of fishing. So please just, if you have questions, ask us. We just want more people to join, be participated, and it's not just muskie fishing. There's a lot of other stuff. It's a muskie group, but there's walleye information. You ask a question about fishing, we'll answer it to the best of our knowledge. It's just a good social way to be out and about. Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, there's not much. That's how we do it. But it's easy to download, and we're just here to help.
We do a lot through email as well. If you guys want to sign up for email, we always make sure to send out each individual thing that you're doing in the chapter on email. We do not in social media.
And the raffles are awesome. We bring in high-end products. You can buy a $10 ticket and win a $200 to $400 prize, whether it's a rod or a bait. And there's just lots of cool stuff. There's a lot of connections we built over the last 9 years, and that we try and utilize them to give back to the people in there. But $40, $60, it's a couple cases of soda or dinner, but it all goes to a good cause. It's all nonprofit, so let's all go into a place of education and passion, which is why we're here. And I thank you guys for coming. A lot of the groups here, but to see new faces, younger people, all generations. This is not for one group, one age. It's literally everything. Everybody wants to catch some fish. And let's pull a couple more winners.
So I got 3 more of these to give out, and be thinking of any other questions you have. 373. All right. You want another one? You can have another one. All right. 383.
Give it to one of these kids that are first starting out.
Perfect. Got 386. Perfect. And 368.
Is that the one for the ballboard?
No, that was actually for a member that purchased it who didn't show up.
I know.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions now, I put up the chapter email. Feel free to reach out. That goes directly to my phone. If you do feel like joining us, Muskies Inc Chapter or muskiesinc.org/join us and select Chapter 65.
We do have the public page.
Yes, we do have a public page that we share stuff that we've done. You're more than welcome to follow that. If you do join us, we'll bring you into a private group where we get those constant updates. Like every time I go out on the water, I share, hey, here's the water conditions, water temperature, clarity, that kind of thing. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. We're here to help. And thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to come up and see the muskies, you're more than welcome to.
Yes.